Welcome back to Freedom Friday, everyone. I am Gabe Erickson, the CEO of Warrior Transition Outdoors. And the goal of this conversation, if you've seen it before, you already know, it's just to find a taste of freedom or a whole lot of it. This week, as you watch this, we want you to, whether you're military or a veteran or milspouse or civilian, we want you to understand a little bit more about what's going on. And hopefully we can just unweave and unwind this tangled web that has been created around life, around the military community, and just see each other and love each other and have empathy. And with that said, I feel like what a great introduction into my guest, who is full of those things, empathy and love. And I don't know how else to describe you. Leslie Coffey, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much, Kay. I really appreciate you inviting me to be here. I'm really honored. I mean, you are just such a, you know, when you enter the room, like, you know, you just get a little bit of peace. And so the fact that you brought me on, I really appreciate that.
I mean, that means a lot because I walk into a room in my own perspective. So that's the first time I've heard it put that way. But I mean, you and I, we just really have bonded from the start of our connection. We met on LinkedIn, and we're doing work in similar areas with our nonprofits with Warrior Transition Outdoors and American Corporate Partners, ACP, which I love the work you're doing there. Do you want to take a second and just plug it? Because we actually had one of our last episode, a few episodes ago, was Yaz as a board member for ACP. So I'm just pulling from ACP here to get all the stories.
That's fantastic. So yeah, so ACP, what we do is we help service members and spouses figure out what they want to do for the next chapter. And the way we go about doing that is providing a customized mentor. So it's really not only figuring out what is best fit for them, but then how to get there. And the mentorship is totally customized based on everybody's season of life is unique and their journey and their goals. So it's no more the herding of the cattle that a lot of people feel in transition. And it's you know, it's one-to-one. So it's one mentor for a year long journey together with a veteran or spouse. And the whole reason I joined the team is because what my mentor did for me nearly 6 years ago, and I'm still in touch with her.
That's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I just actually, I mean, you convinced me. We already do the lifelong advocacy within WTO, but just as a way to be involved with you personally and your organization and the people, I signed up. So I have my first call with my mentee coming up here very soon, and you guys call them proteges, so I'll start to learn that language. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to just building that relationship and seeing where it goes. And I fully anticipate getting just as much, if not more, out of it than he will. So.
It's so fulfilling. And I will tell you, yes, 98% of veterans and spouses would refer us, but for the mentor side, 99% of mentors would refer us because they do have that, you know, it's just watching that journey, watching almost like a parent relationship where you're seeing what you're helping develop and the product of your work. It's a beautiful thing.
That's awesome. Let's get in, if you don't mind, get a little bit more personal with you. You are a military spouse. And so much more, obviously. Like, I hate letting those things define us altogether, right? But tell us a little bit about your story before the military spouse thing. You know, like, where were you born, and how was your childhood, and how did you get to where you're at now?
Okay, yeah. So I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky. Some people call it the Ville. And I met my spouse now when I was 14. We actually met at a high school bus stop, and and so we're still been together. And he served. I just wrapped up 30 years of service, and I was a part of almost 28 of those. So the journey has been interesting to say the least. I was raised by a single mom, and you know, father in and out, but and interestingly, he was as well. So you know, that's just kind of the background that we came on south end of Louisville. Um, Lots of schools for not only as a kid, but then actually as a military spouse.
Sure. Yeah. What you have children yourself?
Yes, we've got 4 kids and a granddaughter. So one of my oldest is in Louisville actually, and I've got a boy in Texas at A&M, and then I still have 2 in the house. And then the newest head of the household is a new puppy. So that's really who's running the ship, let's be honest.
I'm sure. Well, take a second. Tell us about the dog because I saw a picture and that's a cute pup.
Yeah. So he's a mini Cavapoo, which is essentially the combination of a Cavalier, a King Charles Cavalier, and a poodle. So expecting to be about 12 pounds. Right now he's about 6 pounds, but we just got him at the beginning of the year, actually on January 1st. So he's full of life and keeping us on our toes. It's like a fifth baby, really.
Yeah. I mean, it really, as a puppy too, you're taking on another child for sure.
Hmm.
Um, I'm really curious to know, like, just from your own hero's journey. Do you know that concept, the hero's journey?
Not so much.
It's essentially like a cycle that we all follow in our hearts. It's like kind of a universal way to go about anything that's not what do they call it in gaming? Like the standard non-player gamers, right? Like the
Mm.
actors in the background, to be someone special, to live a heroic life of any sort, just doing anything adventurous of any kind. And I don't mean like the adrenaline things, right? I'm talking about just living a worthwhile life. It requires, it kind of kicks in this hero's journey, and it's a circular thing that you kind of cross this threshold where you can never go back, and
Mm.
from there you go through trial after trial after trial until you slay the dragon. But those trials are for your good if you see it that way, right? um and ultimately you need those trials to build you up to a place where you can and ultimately conquer what you needed to conquer. And what I think is so powerful about the hero's journey, one, we're talking about the military community, so we're talking about actual heroes.
Mhm.
But two, that is something that once you understand that, you kind of embrace those challenges and things in
Mhm.
your life. And so that's a little backstory on that. I love the hero's journey. I think we see those, I don't know, what's a favorite movie? Harry Potter, Star Wars, dude,
Yes,
Marvel,
sure.
all of
Hmm.
the above.
All of them.
There you go. So all of those follow that same path when you really pay attention to it, and that's why we
Right.
resonate. They're not good on their own. They're good because they resonate with us as humans.
Hmm.
So with
Right.
that in mind, I'm curious, like that known world. How did you really start to understand like what you were in when it came to the military spouse and the support and helping and everything you had going on?
Well, I would say when you talk about just jumping in, right? When got on a bus at the age of 18, took my first flight to the other coast and got married, and I didn't know a soul in my wedding. I didn't know my witnesses. I didn't know anybody. And then flew back 2 days later. Our actual honeymoon was the Twister. Do you remember that movie, Twister?
Yeah.
It was in the theaters at the time. And flew back home. And then a few months passed by, and then we actually loaded up and moved cross country together. And I would say, no one in my family had really left the state. So nobody was military connected. So that was definitely foreign concept for us, even really vacationing outside the state. And my first real wake up call was literally a wake up call. My spouse was 275 Second Ranger Battalion at the time. And the way they worked then, this is before the wars, this is before 9/11. They would actually have a pager, if you remember those, if you don't remember what that is. And they were only allowed to go outside a certain perimeter at like 60-mile recall. And if they were alerted, they had to come in, get on a plane within, be gone within 2 hours. And had no idea where they're going, no communications, anything like that. And you didn't know how long they were going to be gone. And my first, I had a couple of reps at it, but there was one particular when I was there alone, 2 in the morning, and I was wakened to a dark figure and scared the bejesus out. But it was actually him coming home. But you just had no idea, right? So seeing that one minute he gets that page, he's gone, and 3, 4 weeks, no communication, then all of a sudden returns in the middle of the night and terrifies you. I think that approach there was really, that I was in a whole different world.
Definitely. I'm I'm curious, like, how did you as a human navigate like not knowing what he's going through and the communication gaps probably and some of those things, right? And just a lack of understanding because you weren't there, right?
Mhm.
To see and be and go through whatever he's done and gone through. So how have you navigated some of that stuff
Yeah,
early
so
on and now, there's
right.
probably different ways you've learned.
Absolutely, absolutely. Learning to just listen and be patient because their experiences are completely different, as are the family member side of the house too. Now, that was very early on. Fast forward, multiple deployments, multiple um the extension when service members were supposed to be back home and they were actually extended. So I would say just listening first and being open to that, and not, I'm a big believer of God gave us two ears and one mouth for a reason. So I tried to just offer that and be receptive. But back then, and throughout my spouse journey, family was more than 3,000 miles away. So you didn't have anyone like spouses and families that are left back. They have to create their own families, if you will. They really have to lean on each other because they are geographically separated from family, geographically separated from their spouse. And then fast forward, we went to Fairbanks, Alaska, and we were actually there through multiple deployment cycles. And there, it's very dark and cold, and that's actually where the extension took place. So, but the beautiful thing about, we'll just say Fairbanks, and the spouses there and the community there is you're choosing it. Like, a lot of spouses might, if they can't handle it, they would go home. But the community themselves, they don't just land there. Like if they're choosing to stay there, knowing what they're embracing as far as the environment. So they know that they need to help each other. That's how we survive. And the same thing with the spouses that are there. They know we only have each other. And when you're going through that process, if you have if one of your spouse friends who you know is on the same team or same platoon or same company as your spouse, then you know that it's if they hear from their service member just like you hearing from yours.
Hmm. Yeah. It's I'm just picking up on a lot of things that I don't even know if you understand how profound the things you're saying are. Like when it comes to embraced being there, right? Like that is truly not being a victim of the circumstance. And I think if you know me and you know what I talk about, I talk a lot about this broken veteran stuff, and I'm trying to
Right,
get rid of that. And that
right.
applies to just the broken military conversation around spouses, around other things, and how it's portrayed in the media. There's always this post, service or post deployment come home crash, screaming, fighting, and maybe
Mm.
some of that like conflict does happen, but it's been glorified in a way that it's almost like assumed now that that's the journey. But here you are talking about this embracing of the trial and not leaving, right? And there's such a warrior heart in that I'm trying to make sure people understand, and not just about the veteran or the active duty or whoever, but about the spouses as well, what that takes. Does that resonate or make sense?
Yeah, well, I can give you an example actually. For the extension, and what that means was they were already deployed 12 months. They were on their way home. Some were already what we call ADVON, advanced party. They were already back on the ground. And we had learned through leadership that they were going to be not only extended for an additional 4 months, which is 16 months, but moved from Mosul to the hotbed of Baghdad at the time. And which was, just even more terrifying, if you will. Well, we had learned in a leadership position, I was in a leadership position at the time, that it was going to be on the news at 6 in the morning. And what we had to do was I had a script, and I had to call every military spouse and read the script. But it was 2 o'clock in the morning because I wanted to make sure they learned from us and not from the news. So I called and I started every conversation with saying, I love you. I have to read this script. And so I would read it. At the time, my second in line, my second born, he comes down the stairs in his little Thomas the Tank Engine pajamas, and he's like, 4 more sleeps till daddy comes home. And I'd actually tell him actually 124 more sleeps, because that's how he counted time at the time, is he was 5. And so what resulted, when you talk about embracing in trickle down effects, if you will, what you don't even realize is that so many plans were based off of that year time frame. Lots of soldiers' equipment was in storage. So guess what? It's only for a year-long lease. Those storages are coming up due. People had already had their orders to move to the next location, so they had vacated quarters and their household goods were up. And what are they going to do for the next 4 months? They cannot move to the next installation without their service member. I had one of the saddest cases when I had a spouse who had an IVF appointment with her spouse in Seattle, and we were in Fairbanks. And so having to wait for that connection too, and he wasn't going to be there. I had parents on the ground of soldiers who were ready for the welcome home ceremonies. When you talk about the videos, the welcome home ceremonies, nobody was coming. So that we had to fly in Alaska. We had to fly them back to Florida or wherever they were, come back in 4 months. So it was negotiating with Alaska Airlines to say, bring them back without charging. It was extending these leases for all this equipment. It was arranging a getaway for all these spouses who were just done mentally, because you not only had the weight of deployment, the losses. I mean, in our battalion, I think we lost 26 in just the battalion, but also the kids in the darkness and the cold. So arranging a weekend getaway to a different city for everybody and just for the well-being. So it was so many facets for that one situation, but hugging each other and loving them through it and just letting them know, I've got you, you're not in this alone, you're heard, you're seen, how can we help, those kind of things.
Jeez. I'm kind of speechless, Leslie. Like I'm just taken, like I'm in awe. It's really powerful stuff to think about, because you, like, the service member signed up for that, right? And I know you guys were together a long time, and some people get into it afterward, and everyone has their different story on how to become a military spouse, but there's an aspect of that, like you said, we choose to be there. You were talking about the base, but that's kind of like how your love was. Like you're choosing to engage in that you didn't have government orders, per se. And it almost makes it that much more powerful that it's a leaning in and a choice that you all made to be these people. I don't know. I'm just like so grateful. I'm grateful to all of our soldiers and airmen and all the people for doing what they do. But I've just had this renewed gratitude for and understanding as I've learned more of these stories. It's really powerful stuff. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, I'm curious. What are some of the how did all of that shape you? Like, have you always had this like resilience? Like I tend to think I have a natural resilience that I feel very blessed to have. Not everyone is so lucky, and so they have to work harder for that resilience. But I have other things I'm working on, right? But how has that experience, those trials, having to have those phone calls to navigate those things, just the emotion? It sounds like an emotional roller coaster. Honestly, how have you seen yourself grown? Like, what was your mindset like too?
Yeah, so well, first of all, I would say the resiliency piece, I think, is all a choice, right? You can choose to show up every day. You can choose to love. You can choose to hold people up. You can choose to help. And I think that all comes with the journey. For how it shaped me, I was somebody that they called them, different places call them different things, care team, comfort team. And essentially after a chaplain has made notification, I'm the person that would relieve them. So to go and, hold up the new widow, creating the meals, or just however I can, even if it's just making a pot of coffee. And what that did was, there were times when it would get quiet. If, again, as I said, if somebody was hearing from their service member, it's just like me hearing from mine. And if nobody was hearing, you knew there was a blackout. And that's when it would get very scary, because there was a time when a UPS truck or something came out front, or a government vehicle, they could have just been checking the meter, who knows? But the fact that I heard them, and to come around my house or the stairs, you just, you can't breathe. So there would be some times where I'd pack my kids up and I would just drive the streets in the dead of winter. But if I knew, if I was gone from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., they couldn't, past 10 p.m., they're not going to notify you. They won't notify you until 6 a.m. So it's like, not tonight. I'm not going to be notified tonight. So I would just drive them. And even though they had school and whatnot, I think after 10, come home and go to bed.
Wow. You, I'm getting more and more speechless every podcast I do, because these are the real stories that I'm trying to get out there, the broken stuff that we see when it comes to, the post-service crash and the arguments and the divorces. Like, there's aspects of truth in a lot of the stories, but it's so cinematic and like put out there, in the movie scene and documentaries and stuff, that it's like, these are the real stories, the stuff you're sharing. Like, these are in my mind, this is what people are actually going through. And that matters, like, to connect with what's real and not the cinematic in our minds. So there's gonna be people watching this that are gonna be incredibly moved. Their a level of understanding of things is gonna be broadened and heightened and all of that. So super powerful. When we've spent too, you've been vulnerable from the start, and you said it's tough still, being a military spouse, essentially. Like, what are some of the things that you're going through now? It sounds like connecting and having relationships. Um, you connect very well with people, but what are some of the challenges now that you're at this stage in this journey?
Sure. So, on this side, I will say, um, when we have chosen to transition to a non-military connected community, it's not right outside an installation. It's actually a small town. And I'll be honest with you, my son and I have been here for probably 18, 19 months. And we still don't have any friends. We don't have local friends. They're having a really challenging time integrating into the school. They are high schoolers, and these kids have known each other their whole lives, because it is a smaller community, and they cannot really relate to. I mean, it's a lot where I came from, as far as when I left, and I was telling you, nobody in my family ever left the state. We didn't vacate, like, it was right. Same thing. My sons have seen all the oceans and whatnot. I've rowed most of them. And a lot of these kids have never seen an ocean. So they just are having a hard time finding commonalities and relating. And that is, I think, really compounded the isolation. However, when you talk about embracing and whatnot, it does bring you more together as a unit, because you're equally all, the entire unit is feeling it. So, my boys, they're leaning more on each other more now, I think, than they are. And they're only 19 months apart, my youngest. But now more than they ever have in the past. And I think it's just really, they know that whole, the blood is thick, and they're going to be there for each other. So.
I think that's the heart of the whole victory initiative we're trying to push, to get rid of this broken stuff, is like trial, 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 however, right? Trial, but. And that's the key to resiliency. That's the key to being victorious and understanding that we're not made to we're made to go through suffering, not to be victims of suffering, right? And so I
Mhm.
love that you added that in there very intentionally. However,
Mhm.
um, and here you are in the stage of life that, I mean, I'm sure the person you are now would tell your former self, like, I've got, like, like, look where we're at now. We're not dealing with a lot of the same stuff, right? How are those? What's the juxtaposition there? Because I'm sure you see your husband a whole lot more and all that. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So that's a big reason. Actually, when we started this process, the transition process, we started about 3 years ago. Yeah. almost 4 years ago, about 3.5 years ago. And we didn't know where we were going to go, and what we wanted to start with were our values. So we didn't go where the jobs were. We didn't go where immediate close to family. Yes, we're within a couple hours of family, but it wasn't like we're in the same area. What was really important to us and what we did a lot of research on were our values. So my spouse, after fighting for 30 years, it was really important to find safety and peace of mind and privacy. So that took a lot of research. Interestingly, we had a transition room, a whole room we dedicated to it. We had a giant map of our state, a lot of pins and things, distances to parents and distances to granddaughter, because kids might leave you, but your grandkids are not going to leave you. So we, and then from there, it was a lot of research on the crime rate, the economic, just the community itself. And then it was actually driving around. We would take flights. We were in New York at the time, take flights and actually do normal people stuff in the community. Got an oil change, went to Walmart, went to Kroger, went to bowling, went to fast food, just to kind of try to integrate and see what the actual people were like of the towns. And that told you so much walking around downtowns. Is it clean? Do they have community parks? Because if they do, then maybe they're investing in their local community. So this is kind of our approach. We figure positions and employment comes and goes, but when you're picking a community, really wanted to make sure it aligned with our values.
That's super thorough. That's that's amazing. Um, what are you looking forward to in life? Or what's going super well, or what fills your cup? On a personal, I'm sure the work level is really rewarding as well.
Yeah, so what fills my cup is going to be my love labor. What my position has afforded me is just the stories and seeing the transition and just the transformation of a year-long journey that a veteran or spouse can make with the guidance. Just a little bit of guidance and a little bit of allowing somebody to pour into you. A lot of times veterans, they're pouring into the mission, they're pouring into their team, and spouses are the family, and then they're uprooting and moving so much, and then also kind of supporting the mission. But it's not popular to not have the answers as a leader in the military. And as a spouse, you're so used to supporting everybody else, letting somebody pour into you. And then the mentor side for veterans, being okay with not having the answers and being okay. It is a lot of strength to say, I don't know, and letting somebody lead you along the way. So when I hear the before and the afters almost, or just watching the journey and the epiphanies, that's what fills my cup.
That's awesome. What can people, this audience could be anyone. It could be civilians, could be another military spouse watching, but what can we do to support that community more? Because I know everything you're describing in the small town. I grew up in a small town, so I know exactly the dynamic you're speaking about. But what can people do to come together around this? And that's something that even as our organization is addressing, and you're going to do some help with us on that, to make sure they feel seen and that they're not just like an accessory to, right?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, so small town, well, I think anybody choose kindness, right? Choose kindness and be open to different um people that may not be different or may not look like you, act like you, come from the same background or whatnot. I think that is very helpful. That's what I always try to tell my kids when they're walking out the door. I love you, choose kindness, right?
Yeah,
And then for a spouse, spouses, I would just say that it's going to be a wild ride, but I would not do anything to change any of it because you know, there's nothing like another military spouse. You don't have to exchange words. You just get it. You just get it just from being in the same vicinity. And these things aren't happening to you. They're happening for you and they build you. All these experiences, They're the building blocks that make you who you are. And so it's just, what are you learning and how can you pay it forward?
Great, great advice. Any other last words? Because anything you have to say is relevant right now. I just love listening to you talk. So
Oh, I would just say, for my spouses specifically, and my veterans, spouses, keep your chin up. You're not in this alone. You're seen, you're heard, and you're worthy of a mentor. I will tell you why I have to say this, and I'm sorry, it just occurred to me. When I had my mentor, so often I felt like, who am I to bring something to this call? Why should I, I'm going to be wasting her time. And so I would delay the meeting. I would push it, and I would, and it was just me in my own head. In our situation for ACP, we only get one person to focus on. And so in the fact I was robbing her the one thing she was trying to do. She just wanted to help. And I was robbing her of that because I was in my own way. So you spouses, you are worthy. You're not wasting anybody's time. Let somebody pour into you. It's okay to be vulnerable. For my veterans, if you feel like everybody else has it figured out, you're undecided on the career path, I promise you, 86% are undecided on their next career path. So you're in the majority, you're not alone. And it does feel like an isolating process because it's so individualized, but just know there's just so many people out here that want to help you and walk that journey with you. You just got to let us know how, or be open and being vulnerable to being helped. But again, you're heard, you're seen, because it is very isolating. It is individualized, but there is lots of people that want to be in your tribe and want to help you through that process.
that's why these conversations and these stories are so powerful, because it's helping people see more and more and more. You are not alone, right? Like you said. Um, just had a veteran on last week that's in our program, and he said, the issue I have with the broken veteran narrative is that it causes comparison,
Mm,
and we need to compare. Instead of comparing, we need to relate. And I
mm,
just thought that that was some of the most profound words
yes.
from this humble guy. We need to relate and not compare, because that comparison ultimately leads to that subtle trap of falling in line with,
Mm,
right? So if someone's struggling with this, I'm going to fall in line with that, which exacerbates a lot of issues that we're not even there to begin with. Or maybe it's like you said, a veteran or spouse is saying, oh man, it seems like they have it all together. I better fall in line with that. And that's what they've been taught their whole career, fall in line, right? And there's a lot of like potential danger to that, because you don't have to have it figured out. And that person might not even have it figured out. So you're just comparing maybe nothing to nothing. So I
mm-hmm.
think, relating is everything you just said. Like, you're not alone. And these stories are so powerful. So
Well, that comparison is the thief of joy. So, and it's easy to fall into that. I think that's almost kind of human nature. And in the military side, everything has an SOP. It's been done for 200 plus years before them. There's a system, there's a process, there's a checklist. When you're leaving, it's, you have the freedom, you fought for that freedom to figure it out, but it's also terrifying because uh, what if I get it wrong? Or what if it's the wrong community? Or, all of that, whereas in the military, when you're moving all over, you just accept it and you make it home wherever you are. And at the end of the day, if you want somebody to blame, well, you could blame Uncle Sam or something. But in this situation, when you pick a spot, it's so heavy and it's so like, oh my goodness, because what if, then it's only on me if I get it wrong, right? So just give yourself permission to just enjoy the journey, I would say.
that's really good. Leslie Coffey, thank you so much. What an honor. What a pleasure to hear your story and to have you on.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for doing this and for letting us all relate.
Absolutely. And thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe, follow all the things. We do this every single week, and look forward to more conversations.